Today, I want to run down the post-spring Oklahoma Sooners depth chart as I see it, and all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kid folk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, I want to talk about Oklahoma's post-spring depth chart as I see it. I also want to use this as an opportunity to talk about this really cool podcast episode we got coming up on the number one ranked show, which is dropping on Mondays in the lead up to Big 12, Big 10, Pac-12, basically media days in July. And we're going to talk with some coaches, some past, some future. I say future. No, some current. All to say, I am stepping on my own lead here. Bob Stoops joins the show next Monday. Huge show for us. He was awesome. I got to talk to him for like nearly an hour about his come up in Youngstown, all the way up through becoming the head coach at Oklahoma, how he knew that Lincoln Riley was the guy, what he thinks about Lincoln Riley, and really talk about his coaching tree, which is tremendous. But I also thought it was interesting to go into this conversation because Oklahoma is in a position to win it all in 2021. And I've been loud about that for the better part of 2 years, basically built on this 2019 recruiting class that includes guys like Spencer Rattler and some other 5-star, 4-star players that are the core of this team now that I want to talk about. And I want to talk about both the offense and the defense here, so we're not going to break that up into two uploads, and we're going to do this until basically I get tired of doing it here on the channel and run down the depth chart, because also in here is a great way for me to shore up what I know or what I think I know about each one of the teams I'm going to talk about. So it's a really great exercise that I enjoy doing. And while there are a lot of people that are going to take the depth chart and just go post it on a wall somewhere, it's going to change again in August, and it's going to change again in October, because somebody that's getting carries is in September is no longer going to be getting carries in November, and injuries happen. But I thought this was cool, and I know that this is one of the more popular uploads that I do on the channel each year. And we'll start with my team and the team, because Bob Stoops is going to join the number one ranked show. Follow it on all the socials. I think the Facebook page has already got over 1,000 likes, which you guys are awesome. Like, whatever, man. Twitter is already got the show's got a verified badge. Like, y'all know it took me 9 years to get a verified badge. The show account on Twitter already has a verified badge, and the one on Instagram already has a verified badge. Like, y'all are blowing this show up, and I really enjoy it. All right, so let's talk about the defense first. And Grinch runs a modified, I think of it as sometimes a 4-2-5, sometimes it looks like a 3-3-5, sometimes it looks like a 3-4, and that's why we're going to go through what feels like 12 positions that you can only play 11 at a time. Let's start with defensive end. Isaiah Thomas at the starting position for me, Marcus Stripling behind him, Reggie Grimes there. The thing about Isaiah Thomas is that he had a better 2020 than Ronnie Perkins, okay? Ronnie Perkins only played 6 games, and I get all of that. But Ronnie Perkins had 5.5 sacks last year, goes in the third round to the New England Patriots. Isaiah Thomas had 7.5 sacks and played a lot inside at the defensive line position, defensive tackle, because Jalen Redmond opted out. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but I thought that was interesting to point out. Also went to my high school, Tulsa Memorial, stand up. And if he makes some noise, he goes into double digits with sacks in 2021. Expect to hear him getting drafted, not just in the third, but second or even first round, depending on how big his year is in 21. I think that dude is absolutely up to something. Then at nose tackle, I think we got to start Perrion Winfrey. I slot him as a first-round draft pick, especially if he comes back and does the kind of job that I think he's capable of doing. Behind him, LaRon Stokes, who has been nothing but awesome since joining up at Oklahoma. And then Jordan Kelly. Jordan Kelly, we're still waiting on him to pop, a Tulsa Union dude that I think has the potential to be great. And then at defensive tackle, that's where it gets interesting for me. Jalen Redmond has basically played 1 year of college football, honestly, right? 2018, blood clot issues. 2020 sat out due to COVID. He's up to 6'3", 284 pounds. Playing that position, and the last time that he played a full season, he had 6.5 sacks at that position and was one of Oklahoma's best defensive linemen. If you are able to go Winfrey, Redmond, Thomas, Bonito, who we'll talk about here in a little bit, that's a stout defensive line, man. Like, that's awesome. That's a ridiculous deal. And then Josh Ellison, who's one of the better junior college defensive tackles in the country. As a matter of fact, I think I got this right. Perrion Winfrey and Josh Ellison were the two top defensive tackles in the 2020 recruiting class coming out of junior college. Alex Grinch, Calvin Thibodeau, absolutely doing a job. Behind Josh Ellison, we got Cory Roberson. We'll see what that looks like for him coming out of Manville, Texas. Same Manville that produced Kyle Trask, who was drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and De'Aaron King, who started ahead of Kyle Trask and was a 3,000, 1,000 dude at Houston before transferring to Miami, turning them into a team that looked like it was going to contend to come out of that division, and then got beat by North Carolina. Okay, moving on to middle linebacker. That is the Mike position. David Ugwebu has gone from being a rush in to a dude that might play linebacker to perhaps Oklahoma's best inside linebacker, apart from its Will, who I'll talk about a little bit later on. But Deshaun White, I thought might have had the potential to have a Curtis Lofton type of year last year if he put together something like 100 tackles and like 4 picks or something. Didn't happen. I mean, Oklahoma didn't have a guy with more than 66 tackles last year in 11 games, goes 9-2, wins the Cotton Bowl, wins the Big 12 championship. But that's not too shabby. David Weibo was also the first dude ever to commit to Alex Grinch at Oklahoma. He's long, he's rangy, tremendous speed, and a very smart player. There's actually an interview buried on this channel somewhere where if you put in David Ugwebu's name, you can hear me talking to him about joining up at Oklahoma and what he was like coming out of high school. Of course, Deshaun White behind him. And then Shane Witter, who is, I think, a 4'4" guy coming out of high school, which is stupid. Like, I think he might have busted out 4.51 when he first got to Oklahoma, put on a little bit of weight, has the potential to be a breakout star for them, especially if things break his way in the summer and into the fall. Witter also had like 123 tackles as a senior in high school, and I'm waiting on him to find out where it is he fits, but I think Mike's a good place for him. Probably going to be a linchpin for the 2022 team and start there. All right, best linebacker Oklahoma had in 2020 was Brian Asamoah. Shout out Steve Bullard, who's been a Brian Asamoah fan forever. Also coming out of the Columbus area, and a Mike Stoops get, right? Mike Stoops' kids in the 2018 class have been turning up here. Buki among them. Like, Buki transfers to Washington, but also had like 5 passes defended. Only Trey Brown had more with 6. But Asamoah quietly had a breakout year in 2020. 66 tackles, right? 2 sacks, a forced fumble, an interception, and 4 passes defended, right? That's tied for 3rd on the team with corners and safeties. Outstanding player, and a dude that projected at running back as much as he projected at linebacker seems to be figuring it out with Brian Odom in that linebacking core. I don't like the idea of Brian Meade behind him, but so I put Brendan Walker there. I think Brendan Walker's a more talented football player, but Brian Meade continues to find his way onto the football field, and we'll see how that goes, right? At that outside linebacker, rushed in, stand-up edge guy, we got Nick Bonito, who I slot in the first round, had 9 sacks in, 2020, which is ridiculous. He's a tweener for some people, but I think he's the kind of guy that the Baltimore Ravens have come to value. Like Tyus Bowser was the only guy in the NFL last year with 3 sacks and 3 interceptions. That's called versatility. That's what Nick Bonito provides, not just Oklahoma, but everybody. So when you're projecting for the NFL, that's what I would project him as, is that kind of Matthew Judon, Yannick Ngakoue kind of player, depending on how big he actually gets. But he's going to get pushed by, I think, Clayton Smith, who could be the breakout player of the 21 class. He's a monster. It's just getting him on the field and getting him in the right position. And I think at this position, at this edge place, he can be just awesome. So we'll see. But if you can go too deep with Bonito and Clayton Smith and then maybe mix in a Brendan Walker, you got a chance to be great. At the cornerback positions, right? Field boundary, we'll see how that works out. DJ Graham is a lot of people's new favorite corner. He actually felt like he was playing better than Trey Brown at some points. Trey Brown was a 4th-round draft pick to the Seattle Seahawks. I think he's got the best chance to make that team as a kick returner, but we'll see. Jaden Davis is also going to compete with DJ Graham for that spot. Jaden Davis had 5 passes defended in 2020. When he showed up well. I really loved him as a true freshman. Josh Eaton is probably going to round out that group, and at that right cornerback position or field boundary, depending on how you want to line it up, Woody Washington back at his natural position of corner after playing safety in his first year. I think that's great. I think that's where he needs to be. Also showed up with 5 passes defended. And then you could move Latrell McCutcheon in behind him, or even Justin Harrington, who is a really intriguing prospect at corner because at 6'3", 215 pounds, you match up really well with any wide receiver they want to put at the X or the Z. And if he has the short burst speed and long range speed to play in that cover 3 and sometimes cover 2 scheme, but rarely, just match quarters, I think that could be really fun. At the nickel spot, you're going to see a new starter because this was Buki's job basically since he got to Oklahoma. Buki is a lightning rod for folks. I mean, one of the most controversial players in Oklahoma's recent history, and I don't understand why. The dude has been nothing but cool. He perhaps goes a little hard in picking up the personal foul penalties, but I'd rather have a dude that's over-aggressive than a guy that's not aggressive at all, especially at his size, all right? Goes up to Washington and wins the best hands in the room ball for spring at Washington, where all they do is put out defensive players, particularly at the corner and safety position. So you're already looking bad if you were doubting Buki to begin with. But Jeremiah Cradell feels like the dude there. We'll see what Justin Broyles actually has to say about this. That's another intriguing candidate for me, along with Justin Harrington. Nickel slot is, I think, the toughest position to play in all of defensive football because you have to have the ability to rush off the edge, to cover tight ends, to cover fast slot receivers, all at the same time. So you're kind of a hybrid safety, linebacker, edge guy, depending on how you get deployed. And having that dude that can play that position for you is nothing short of a miracle in some ways, right? Okay, strong safety. Delarian Turner-Yell retains his spot, though Key Lawrence is probably going to push him hard for that. Delarian Turner-Yell was also the second leading tackler on that 2020 team, so it's going to be hard to take that strong safety off the field, but that's what he is. He's basically a box safety. He's more of a Cam Chancellor type than he is a ball hawk. Free safety, Pat Fields, captain of the team last year, I think going to be captain of the defense this year. He's going to retain his spot at free safety. Bryson Washington's probably going to push. I'm still thinking about what does Kendall Dennis actually mean here in this defensive back group, but that's how I see the two deep for the offense. All right, the defense. Let's move on to the offense. Rattler's going to be the starting quarterback. I got Rattler as the number 1 overall pick in the 2022 NFL draft. If he puts together the kind of season that Baker did in his 2018 year, right? Or 2017 year, excuse me. Yeah, that's what it's going to be because he has the arm talent of Pat Mahomes where he can just flip his wrist and the ball goes 70 yards. He moves well. He's a little short, but that doesn't seem to bother anybody anymore. I mean, Zach Wilson, Kyler Murray, even Sam Howell, who many people think is a better quarterback prospect than Rattler, have an opportunity to prove it this year. Caleb Williams behind him, Micah Bowen behind him. It's a very strong group of quarterbacks, as you would expect from Lincoln Riley, even after losing Chandler Morris in the transfer portal to Texas Christian, who scored against Iowa State in the Big 12 championship. Of course, Micah Bowens comes from Penn State. And we'll have an opportunity to compete with Caleb Williams for the starting job 2022 if things go well for Rattler this year. I don't expect to see him again after this year. At tailback, it gets interesting for me because people I talk to around the program swear up and down that Marcus Major is the most talented tailback in that room. It's just about can he put it together. But you also get Kennedy Brooks back from that 2020 COVID year like you get Jalen Redmond, and Kennedy Brooks is a walking first down. You add Eric Gray, who put people on skates in the spring game, transfers in from Tennessee, and was really outstanding for them. I think you're going to see all three of those dudes get lots of carries. Mikey Henderson figures into this a little bit, but I think you want to keep Mikey Henderson over at fullback, but we'll see, especially what's going on around Seth McGowan, whether or not they let him stay or they just permanently put him in the running back room with DeMarco Murray. And add to that, you're going to need these dudes to be productive because you got beat down again in running back recruiting, which is not something we're used to hearing about with Oklahoma, losing both the guys that you wanted to Alabama, right? All right. So wide receiver. At the X position, I got Theo Weiss as the starter, though you could see Cody Jackson also getting reps there, getting opportunities there. Mario Williams also figures there, but I wonder how much they want to put him at that on the numbers or in the slot, depending on how you feel about Drake Stoops. But Drake Stoops being put on scholarship tells you a lot about how they must feel about him at OU. At the wide receiver, that's the other number spot. Marvin Mims, The only other freshman All-America on this team is Spencer Rattler. I like Marvin Mims at this position. I think Marvin Mims was outstanding last year. I think he's going to be a first-round draft pick when he comes out. He's that good. I mean, that's found money for Lincoln Riley. This is a dude that was committed to go to Stanford, reopened his recruitment quietly, didn't tell anybody about it, and in the process, set the single-season national record for receiving yards. Over 2,600 this dude had in one season, and the Texas high school career receiving yards record with over 5,000. That is your dominant wide receiver. Where Jaden Hazelwood, though, perhaps might have something to say about that. You can do a lot there. We'll see if Brian Darby sticks there as well. So the outliers here for me. Mike Woods transferring in from Arkansas. Arkansas fans love Mike Woods. And I'm just thinking that receiving room that Dennis Simmons and Cale Gundy have is just going to be ridiculous. Because you could go Mike Woods, you could go Jaden Hazelwood. Like across, you could go Theo Weiss, Jaden Hazelwood, Marvin Mims. Then you could go Mario Williams, Drake Stoops, Cody Jackson. And that's before we get into Mike Woods, right? That's how deep that receiving group is. And that's before we get to tight end, where Austin Stogner is going to be your starter. Braden Willis is probably going to get in there and get snaps, along with the H-back spot with Jeremiah Hall. Mikey Henderson also figures into this a little bit. Man, you could throw the ball all over the yard with this offense. At left tackle, I think you're going to see Wanye Morris earn that start, though Stacy Wilkins and Anton Harrison are going to have a lot to say about that. Anton Harrison looked really good last year. Stacy Wilkins coming back is also going to have, I think, an impact on not just your depth, but how good you are up front, because those dudes are going to push each other. You get Marquise Hayes back along with Robert Congle at that left guard position. Andrew Rame, I think, figures there, but that's depending on how you feel about McIver, really, at that center position. Let's go with Rame. I like Rame there. You could also see Robert Congle starting there. Chris Murray also figures into this as well. At right guard, Tyrese Robinson is going to be back in tandem, I think, with Marquise Hayes. And then we'll see how Congle, Rame, and Murray factor in there at right tackle. This is the problem for me. Because you know your left tackle is Wanye Morris. Do you trust Eric Swinson enough to start him at right tackle? Or do you want to move Anton Harrison or Stacy Wilkins over there? That's going to be an interesting discussion for Bill Beatonbow to have out loud. But outside of that, the only other place that I think that Oklahoma needs to be concerned is who's going to be returning kicks for you. Okay? You had dudes like TJ Pledger and Trey Brown returning those, and Trey Brown was an awesome kick returner. I think if you can find that at your cornerback spots, more power to you. If you can find that at wide receiver spots, I would very much enjoy that. But it's been a while since D.D. Westbrook was back there. It's been a while since Alex Ross was back there. Can't believe I'm actually saying nice things about Alex Ross. You have the opportunity here to field a national championship team. The problem is you don't get to get tested until Iowa State. Okay? Because Texas is going to be in year one of Steve Sarkisian. Texas Christian is going to be Texas Christian. Baylor's still got to figure itself out offensively after firing Larry Fedora, getting in Jeff Grimes. We'll see. I just think that Oklahoma's not going to actually see anybody that can challenge them in the way that a college football playoff team would challenge them until they get to a college football playoff. Like that's a give Oklahoma the Willies kind of space, really, because OU is 0-3 in the college football playoff, and if you match them up against an SEC team, usually goes the SEC's way. Same thing with Clemson. What's going to be interesting about this, especially if Oklahoma runs the table, is whether or not Oregon can beat Ohio State. Because if Oregon manages to beat Ohio State in Columbus, they are in the driver's seat to make the playoff. Full stop. And it would be so much fun to see Oklahoma playing Oregon in a college football playoff. But that's putting the cart before the horse. I wanted to talk about the depth chart. I went through it a little bit. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. And we'll see y'all tomorrow. Deuces.